so I can see you well. Well, we had a long preparation. As you can see, TJ was telling everybody how he did calls and calls. And yesterday, at about 6 o'clock, we exchanged a couple of emails with you. But we know their stuff. I'm perfectly happy. And I'm here, I have to admit, because I want to learn, but also because I want to tell you that this is important. This is really important for the industry. Actually, it's not just me wanting to tell you, it's my bosses. One of them is here, the board members. So I'm on my best behavior. We, at the AGM of MEF, identified specifically artificial inflated traffic as one of its fundamental critical topics to be discussed. Maybe it is not real strong in Canada, but it's coming. And smishing, as you know about MEF, we have a very long fighting with smishing. So both of the two topics close to our heart. Now, Jason, and well, here we go. I was going to ask you, perfectly, what are we talking about?
Yeah, so I would just want to give an education 101 really, because a couple of basics on smishing and AIT for those who aren't aware. I think those more smishing you've seen over in Canada, but when it comes to AIT, directly you may not be affected, but we'll tell you a little bit about it because it is coming and it will be affecting some of your customers here in Canada. And then we'll have a bit of a chat about whatever time we've got left over. I think that the time was already down.
Don't look
today.
at the time. Don't worry about it. We'll get a couple of minutes for you back.
Thank you.
My boss.
So first thing I just wanted to cover off really from a MEF perspective, for those of you who aren't aware, there is a MEF fraud framework. Originally built this together with people like Robert from Sinch and many others in the industry, and it's gone through many evolutions with MEF members to improve this. It's currently on its 3rd version. I know Nick, who's somewhere around here, has got one of his tasks to upgrade this now to version 4 with another fraud type. But as you can see, the principles of this fraud framework are to look at all of the parts of the messaging ecosystem in terms of the enterprises or the businesses, the consumers, operators and service providers, and figure out where or calculate where all those fraud types are coming from and what we can do about it. So 2 things really. Quick definition on these things, because I think sometimes we think of smishing as one type of activity, but it's a lot more than that, isn't it, Finn?
It involves SIM farms a lot of the time as well, so that was also listed on the framework. So it's not just a single thing. Yeah, absolutely.
I think for me the main thing around smishing though is it's for malicious purposes. It's about a fraudster trying to get hold of your details and trying to steal money from you. That's what it's about, whereas artificial inflation of traffic, that in the main comes from the providers trying to get some what they call the interconnect revenue when messages pass between operators. And generally, AIT is for high-cost networks or countries. Some countries, the charges for an SMS termination are 20 cents or above in some countries. I know that's way in excess of what you're used to here in Canada and in most parts of the world, but in some countries the rates are that high. So the financial incentive for fraudsters to abuse that is significant.
May I challenge that? I mean, it might have started, we've seen that, and there is if you're all interested, there is a market research from Mobile Square. But we now see artificial inflated traffic on mobile marketing and marketing in general, digital marketing accounts, will be told by one of our members and filtered for 40%. 40% of the traffic out there is fake in the digital world. Now, wouldn't people like to make money on everywhere, despite with artificial intelligence inflated traffic as well?
Well, I think
are we going to see that in Canada and everywhere else?
At the minute, I don't think there's AIT terminating in too many North American carriers. It tends to be different regions, Eastern Europe, parts of Africa. And we've done a lot of analysis on this, but there is a correlation between both AIT and shift away from SMS being the primary channel for business messaging, and it is linked to changes in the business model. And it stands to reason that if there's more money to be made it is also more attractive for fraudsters. But it's not just a function of the commercial model or the price. You know, there's 3 broad buckets in any sort of business messaging delivery chain. There's the enterprise, there's the aggregator or CPaaS provider, and then there's the operator. So there's things that all 3 stakeholders can do. An enterprise can, you know, use CAPTCHAs, they can use retry timers, geofencing. CPaaS providers, we can clean up routing. We can take a look at quota rates and limits. And operators can, you know, they can monitor their least number ranges a little better. So because the ecosystem is so big, we all have a part to play, to be fair.
Yeah, I think, you know, I know generally I said it is the higher priced networks countries. You know, we do observe AIT in the UK. You know, it's not that much more expensive than Canada or the US in terms of messaging in comparison to Eastern Europe and some other countries. But, you know, we do see it, and at that point, you know, it is a reminder, an education piece back to our clients that this is happening to them because they're completely unaware of it. But also downstream for us to the operators. You know, what can the operators do? How can they block these ranges? And generally they're very proactive. They block those ranges. It's a tier 3 somewhere down the line, and they just have to disable their number range and everything's okay again. I think the other thing I wanted to quickly cover off, so we had a couple of examples.
I'll keep interrupting, but you go ahead.
There are only a couple of quick slides from last night, Dario. Finn came up with some brilliant examples. I don't know if he and Matthew, Ian's still there, and he mentioned a comment earlier about whether something was spam or fraudulent. So we've got a few examples that you might be able to define, Ian, but we'll let everyone make their own decision on when they're fraudulent.
We haven't said the word fragmentation yet either, so Caitlin will be happy.
Are you playing?
But spam came up, so these are actually just from my phone, my Canadian phone. And all of these are fake, so I'm not casting shade on any of the brands, but everyone in this room works in this industry. Let's call us fluent in tech, somewhat fluent in fraud. So we may not be the, the target for this, but you know, when it comes to smishing, it's really difficult to counteract it. We can have spam filtering and firewalls, but a lot of that, again, comes from enterprises advertising their short codes here in Canada, or indeed their 10 DLC south of the border in the US, advising their clients and customers on what to expect and not, such as, if you look at all of these 5 examples, so there's 2 Canadian banks, there's the CRA, the Revenue Agency, Spotify and Netflix, big brands. But there's a sense of urgency, there's a sense of, you know, increasing the level of suspicion. And if it catches you on the hop, I think one of the individuals here, I think it wasn't Eric, I think it was Mr. Spouse from, he said he got caught. Well, I very nearly got caught, and I work in this area. So we need to educate people at this level. We talked about end users. We need to educate them what to expect and what not. And that's an ecosystem problem as well. So I think we can do better. Like last year, the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre reported, I think it was 530 million lost to fraud individually, over 40,000 cases. And the number one, I don't know what the overall contribution was, but number one was phishing. But that's only the tip of the iceberg. There's 10% that's reported. So this is an issue, and it's a reputational risk for all of us.
Well, can I ask you then to cover something else, which is your experience from UK, Spain, and Ireland of the registry for SMS, and what came out of those? Is there any lessons that can be shared with Canada?
Yeah, I can't, apologies, I can't remember who said this earlier, but they were talking about, you know, getting people together like we've got here, but sometimes on a more intimate basis that needs to happen. So when we did the sender ID registry in the UK, you know, I locked the 4 operators in a room, almost, put the 4 operators in a room and brought some of my customers along. So I brought Barclays and Lloyds and RBS and people along as our clients and introduced them. We went through what are their real business problems. What do they see? What do they observe? Let's prove this with real evidence rather than hearsay. And we use that as a catalyst to onboard those, we now call them merchants as part of the UK sender ID process. together with the operators and the industry. So we used UK Finance as a trade body in the finance area because that was being hit the hardest. Together with MEF, and we're now 5 years in, are we? 4 years in? I've forgotten now since we built that.
1 year of BSc and 3 years of official working as a solution for the industry.
You're in Spain and Ireland as well, recently launched in Ireland. I think, Almas, from Endstream, like what you've done to get the 3 nationwide operators, or carriers, I beg your pardon, in Canada here, something like this could really work here as well. Absolutely, the sender ID.
Yeah, agree. And you know what I'm surprised about. We don't have a position where everything has to be registered. You know, we allow alpha sender IDs in the UK, which means I could put as a sender ABC 1 2 3 4 5 and send a message. No registration required. It doesn't have to be numeric. So it's a very different ecosystem in terms of there's more flexibility. And the sender ID register in the UK, you know, it was completely acknowledged by the government's cybersecurity team that without it, NCSC, that without it, the UK would have struggled and would have had significantly more fraud during COVID when people were being messaged so much. And so that was a great acknowledgement for all the work that we'd all done to deliver that service and help, you know, UK citizens.
And I would say, I mean, I'm not directly involved with this, I'm not trying to get myself covered in a positive light, but the team that does it, people seem to be saying MEF is managing and supporting. The real value in the end is the facilitated discussion. So in the end, that's the biggest takeaway that I got is you need to involve, by the way, some of the banks you mentioned are now MEF members, because they are part of a discussion. We are part. Some of the operators need to be part of that discussion, understanding what happens. The aggregators as well. So it's a wider, and our associations as we welcome them very much. So interesting.
I was going to say on the back of what we did with Sender ID Registry, Fraud Framework, is also the Code of Conduct.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a big thing for us. We, as MEF, the Code of Conduct, I'm going to summarise probably a 20-page legal document, and it says, "Thou shall do the right thing." Okay? It doesn't say, "I am doing the right thing today." It's just that I will do the right thing. And so if somebody highlights to you that you're doing something that is not quite ethical in one way or another, you have an obligation to put it right rather than just ignoring it and burying your head in the sand. Again, that's worked well because the NCSC has mandated that for all government services in the UK. So if you want to be able to transmit messages on behalf of the UK government, you must have signed the Code of Conduct. If you don't sign it, you're not involved. It's as simple as that. So it's great getting those wins, and it would be nice to see the Code of Conduct used more widely because it's quite a generic document.
Yes, and by the way, Code of Conduct available for all of you to peruse and check and all to participate. It's on our website, and please do have a look. It has now also been introduced by some of the carriers as part either referred directly or been lifted and included into their terms and conditions. So that's the kind of support we would like to see as well. And so I'll mention, this is turning into a small advertising, but we're going to have drinks later. It's all just enjoy these for 30 seconds. The fraud framework, which you just referred to, is also available to members and non-members for everybody to see and to download. Please do so. So is a Code of Conduct available. And if you need any information on the Sender ID, we are here to answer you, and you'll find something on our website as well. But let me come back to Canada now. So we have looked at what's available out there, and it looks like there's plenty. What's your recipe now? What should the Canadian do or think about AIT and smishing? Starting Fionan, and then we'll come back to Jason.
I think with AIT, it may not be, and perhaps the carriers in the room can contradict me, but what we're seeing in Sinch is that it's not necessarily hitting here yet. But of course, the enterprises, of course, some of them have been hit. So be prepared. I think simple things like that I've already outlined. If you're in enterprise, look at the conversion ratios. Choose your technology partner correctly. Choose your CPaaS provider correctly. And for us as a CPaaS provider, along with Cisco and other people in the room, make sure your routing and is clean, and take a look at using your pattern recognition. We've talked about AI versus ML, but look for abnormalities. You know, look for spikes. And is it a sequential number range? Is it a dodgy country? Use global threat databases. There's plenty of vendors here. And for the operators, the carriers, I keep switching between the European and the North American definition of that, excuse me. You know, literally take a look at your ranges, make sure they're being used. And if you're getting 100K a month, and all of a sudden it goes to 2 million a month, maybe take a look at that, you know? That's a spike.
Yeah, I would hope that it wouldn't take a month, but it is keep an eye on, in terms of, you know, real focus immediately is you can keep an eye on those volumes. What do they look like? Is there any abnormal patterns? That's the quickest, dirtiest way, I would say, of figuring it out, rather than you know, more advanced tools and techniques, which are great, but they just take a little longer to implement.
Something else actually, and somebody else brought it up. Forgive me, I don't remember who, but we can find spikes. You can look at a graph and find a spike very easily, but sometimes they're just underneath that quota limit, you know, and that's sort of insidious. So they're using the AI tools as well, the fraudsters. They are better at social engineering than we are because that's their job. They do it full time. So as with smishing, if you click on that link, if you call that number, you're in the danger zone because they do that for a living and you don't. That's why they succeed 1 in every 1,000 times.
I'd say, yeah, you know, never give up. Never give up. Keep battling, keep battling. It is like this, you know, that game whack-a-mole. You're just going to keep hitting them and they're going to spring up somewhere else. You know, we all have a rule book that we adhere to. The fraudsters just don't care. They'll do whatever they can to take your money. So yeah, you know, keep learning, keep evolving, and you know, together we can help reduce that fraud.
Just so you need grit, in other words. And by the way, invitation immediately for all of you to cross the Atlantic and come to London on the 5th of September, where we're going to have our meth anti-fraud event. We'll look at the end-to-end all the fraud issues that are happening in the ecosystem. But until then, for my discussions, thank you very much. I try to ingest, and thanks for playing with me, a sense of urgency. These might not be problems that you see as imminent in the industry, but they are really important to be looked at, and they might be coming. So thanks to Jason, thanks to Fionan. Again, thanks.